What's up guys? Welcome to part 7, I think we're at, with the VERKERK VOLVO build, and we're going to be doing in this episode steps 7 and step 8, which is basically just constructing the axle casing around the diff, fitting the gears and stuff and some bearings in there, and then we can come back and do these two parts, and the next part after that looks like we may be installing some what looks to be brake discs and brake pads and stuff, and brake calipers, like an invitational type thing. So again, maximising the details out of the kit. So I've sorted out the parts here that we're going to be needing for parts 7 and 8, and there's a little bit highlighted in blue here. So I do have a little bit of thread lock, which we are going to be needing for a couple of nuts and screws. So, the VERKERK VOLVO build part 7. So, I do hope you're all enjoying it so far. I'm trying to make it as informative as possible, because obviously it's not like the usual Tamiya stuff where you've built one, you've built them all kind of thing. Again, I've just bagged all the parts I need for these 2 steps. Now, going back to, I think was episode 3, which was the actual first part of the build, and I broke a couple of parts off this sprue. Now, it did have this little bit on here, and there's no code or number to it, so I decided I'd keep it and not throw it just in case. Now, if you guys or anyone has thrown that away, we need it here in step 8. Now, this little part is this here, which is SUR13, and it's going to be used in here somewhere with inside the diff and axle housing. Fortunately, I kept that, and that was a wise decision. So for step 7, all we're going to be needing is a couple of bearings, these 2 arms. Now these 2 arms are the same, so when fitting them it doesn't make no odds which way around they go, just make sure they are the correct way around, but there is no left or right. And just make sure your axle is the right way around, and an easy way to tell that is this little bit on the top. You can see it there in the manual, but there's not one at the bottom, and it's clearly not this side with the diff bevel part in it. So that's pretty relatively simple to follow, so really easy, just how it is in the manual. Just trying to figure out how far these bearings go down this little shaft. There we go. So connect the bearings, make sure they're the right way around, and they're just going to plonk inside there, and then that whole unit can then just sit within the axle housing. So just make sure these bearings are sat in between there, so you get a nice flush. And that, guys, is step 7. Real easy. So now step 8. So the first part, this is where we're going to be using Loctite, and all we're going to be doing is popping this little like gear bevel onto there like so, and we're just going to screw that in place using this screw here, and again a little bit of Loctite on the end just to stop it going anywhere, as this is a rotating part. So a little bit of Loctite and we're good to go. So a little bit of thread lock. I keep calling it Loctite, it's because I do use a Loctite thread lock. So this is just some out of a Tamiya kit. a little bit on the end there, and then that can work its way through the thread, just holding it into place. Now then, it's my little screwdriver. Once you've got that pit, I'm going to take one of these bearings. Now note there are two types of bearings in the bearing bag. There are your ordinary type bearings, which we've just used here, and then there's like these which look like a half bearing, if you will, with an outer ring, and making sure that's the right way around, and that's going to go that way over onto there. And taking the other side of the axle, and it's the same again. You've got that so you can distinguish like your right way up, if you will, and then the little bevel, that's going to plop inside there. The bearing will seat within a little hole in there. Just push that in there. Now, the small piece which I chose not to throw away, this little bit here, all this does is going to rest in between the axle housings, like so, and then that'll create a seal in that hole there. Now, before I lock all this up, I am going to put a bit of grease in there. Now, I do have a bit of marine grease which I use on my crawlers, but I might have just some of the ordinary Tamiya ceramic grease which I can use if I have some of that in here. As it's not going to be being bashed through water and under heavy stress, this ceramic grease should be fine. Put a little blob in there as well. I say a little. I can never have too much grease. I'm not sealing it yet, but I am just going to work some of that grease in there. But at least you can see that by rotating where the wheels bolt on here, like the end of the shafts, you can see this little centre diff shaft there rotating, so all's good in that respect. Now then, there we go, got all grease worked around everywhere in there. Now I'm just going to do and make sure the inside gets greased up, and to do this I'm just going to rotate those in the opposite directions because it's an open diff and not a lock differential. Right, so now I'm happy with the grease in there. We can now proceed to pop all this back together. Now then, so it's the little bit we didn't throw away. Let's not forget to pop that in there. And then that can only go one way now, which is that away. Oh. Now we can close this up. So here is the fiddly bit once again with these tiny screws. So screwing in from the back, one of these, and tiny washer. I'm just going to slip that through this tiny hole, followed by a tiny nut on the end. So these ones are little flat heads. So where's my little flat tool? I'm guessing this build requires a lot of patience. If you ain't got it, I don't think this build is for you. I hate flat-headed screws anyway. They're a pissing nightmare for this. Right, it's grabbed it for now, so that's the main thing. So I'm just going to repeat that and get all 4 of these in there and then tighten them up properly. So I've got 2 in, going in a diagonal motion just to evenly close up this. And at the minute I feel like I've got Parkinson's disease trying to do these. Pissing nightmare. So fiddly, yet doable. But that is the rear axle and differential complete. So it is nice to actually see some mechanical parts working. And we have the front axle there with the airbags. So next step, in the next video we'll come back and we'll do this section. A little more progress once again. And like I say, it is nice to see some mechanical movements going on here. So that's another step out the way. A little bit more done, making more progress. Absolutely loving it. 10 out of 10 to VERKERK so far for this. It's spot on. The details are amazing. It's just down to like all the little detailing in the axles, or anywhere in fact, whether it's down to the torsion bars in the front axle. But definitely an amazing build so far, and I'm yeah, really enjoying it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I shall catch you guys in the next video when we build some more VERKERK truck. So thanks for watching. Ciao for now, guys.